The moment Alexander Hawthorne stepped through the grand double doors of his London townhouse earlier than expected, the air seemed to shift, because what he saw in the kitchen made his heart skip and suspicion flare all at once. Alexander, a 51-year-old white British billionaire, froze in place, his eyes narrowing as he observed his only son, Dominic Hawthorne, a 24-year-old young man leaning over the counter, laughing quietly at something Naomi Clark had said. Naomi, a 25-year-old black maid chopping vegetables while explaining something with calm authority, her uniform crisp and unassuming yet carrying an undeniable presence. The scene was innocent to an outsider, yet to Alexander, raised on wealth, status, and assumptions, it was a jolt to his expectations, because no one in his meticulously controlled world had dared to occupy space with such natural ease in his son's proximity. He cleared his throat softly, but neither Dominic nor Naomi noticed immediately, engrossed in their quiet teamwork and the exchange of ideas, a subtle, effortless bond forming over kitchen tasks. Alexander's mind raced with questions, prejudices surfacing unbidden, old fears whispering judgments about loyalty, status, and propriety, while Naomi continued explaining something with patience and intelligence, her tone firm yet kind, challenging Dominic's assumptions without confrontation. Alexander's initial suspicion was mingled with disbelief, because he had never been accustomed to seeing someone who looked like Naomi in a position of confidence in his household, let alone sharing his son's attention. Dominic, sensing movement, finally turned and smiled at his father, the gesture both casual and defiant, acknowledging Alexander without embarrassment, as if saying, "This is my space too." The air crackled with unspoken tension, not from conflict, but from the collision of assumptions and reality, and Alexander felt the familiar sting of recognition that control and wealth do not guarantee understanding, that prejudice blinds even the most powerful to courage, skill, and character. Naomi looked up briefly, eyes calm yet piercing, offering a nod of respect mixed with quiet confidence, the kind that comes from years of proving oneself in a world quick to dismiss. Alexander's heart pounded, a mixture of shock, shame, and curiosity, as he realized that the story he had built in his mind about people like Naomi was about to crumble. The kitchen, warm with sunlight streaming through the French windows, held the beginning of a lesson he had not expected to learn in his own home. If you can feel the tension and wonder in this moment, take a second to subscribe, because what happens next will test assumptions, loyalty, and courage. And if you have ever misjudged someone based on appearance, comment where you are watching from, because the truth is about to challenge everything Alexander believes. Alexander Hawthorne stood frozen for a moment, his sharp eyes scanning the kitchen, privilege and authority colliding with the simple sight of his son Dominic laughing quietly at something Naomi Clark had said, and the calm confidence in her movements as she chopped vegetables with precise, effortless skill, her warm brown skin glowing in the sunlight streaming through the French windows, her alert, intelligent eyes meeting his gaze briefly with quiet assurance. Alexander's mind raced, prejudice and pride warring with curiosity and an uncomfortable spark of admiration, as he realized he had underestimated both his son and Naomi, assuming order and propriety must align with his expectations. And yet here they were, calmly defying him without confrontation, their natural bond and mutual respect visible in every gesture, every laugh, every glance. He cleared his throat, voice steady but curious, and asked Dominic why he seemed so comfortable working with Naomi, expecting a nervous apology. But instead his son smiled, shoulders relaxed, and explained simply that she was talented, reliable, and smart, someone he trusted, which was all that mattered. And Alexander felt a sudden sting of shame, realizing that for decades he had measured loyalty, intelligence, and worth by appearance, pedigree, and obedience, never recognizing merit when it did not fit his narrow expectations. Naomi turned slightly, her gaze steady, her fingers still moving with careful precision, and spoke softly yet firmly, explaining that work was about competence, honesty, and dedication, not the color of skin, the wealth of a family, or the assumptions of someone who had spent a lifetime judging from above. Her voice carried a calm authority, a quiet power that demanded acknowledgement without force, and Alexander felt the familiar walls of control cracking in his chest, because her words revealed a truth he had ignored far too long. Dominic laughed lightly at a clever remark Naomi made, the sound warm and unpretentious, and Alexander noticed the ease in which she guided him through a kitchen task, correcting gently, suggesting improvements, and making him feel capable rather than corrected. And in that moment, he understood that respect could be earned in ways far deeper than wealth, authority, or age, and that humility was not a weakness, but a bridge to understanding. The tension in the room shifted palpably. Every step, every glance, and every shared smile between Naomi and Dominic rewriting Alexander's assumptions about people he had dismissed or undervalued, and he realized that the lesson before him was not a confrontation but a revelation. Courage, intelligence, and dignity often reside in those we overlook, underestimated because of bias, habit, or status. If you can feel the awakening and tension in this moment, take a second to subscribe, because the next chapter will reveal a choice Alexander cannot ignore, one that will change the dynamics of his household forever. And if you have ever misjudged someone in your life, comment where you are watching from, because what follows will challenge every assumption about respect, loyalty, and true value. Alexander Hawthorne stood in the sunlit kitchen, the warmth of the afternoon highlighting the fine lines on his face and the silver streaks in his hair, feeling a storm of emotion he had not expected, because for the first time he saw clearly the courage and intelligence of Naomi Clark. A black woman revealed a mastery he had ignored for years. Dominic leaned slightly toward Naomi, smiling in a way that communicated trust, ease, and mutual respect, the kind Alexander had never realized could exist outside his curated expectations, and the sight struck him like a revelation, because he understood that authority and wealth had blinded him to merit, humility, and character. He cleared his throat softly, voice barely more than a whisper, asking Naomi how she managed to command respect without raising her tone, and she replied simply, explaining that respect is earned through honesty, competence, and dignity, not through fear or position, her words carrying a calm authority that penetrated Alexander's walls of pride. He swallowed hard, heart-pounding, as shame, admiration, and disbelief collided, because he had spent decades judging others by superficial measures, while this young woman had quietly rewritten every assumption he had ever made. Dominic watched silently, sensing the shift in his father, proud yet patient, while Naomi continued her work, moving with elegance and precision, demonstrating that her skill was matched by integrity and clarity, and Alexander's mind raced as he reflected on the countless times he had overlooked people who deserved recognition, dismissed voices that challenged him, and assumed loyalty was tied to wealth and pedigree. He finally stepped closer, feeling the need to act rather than merely observe, and asked Naomi to teach him something small in the kitchen, a gesture that felt trivial but was monumental in its symbolism. And she nodded, smiling gently, showing a patience born of experience, while every action of hers, the way she chopped, guided, and explained, spoke of resilience and intelligence that could not be contained by prejudice or status. The sunlight streaming through the French windows illuminated every detail, the subtle ease of Dominic's learning, the calm authority of Naomi, and Alexander's tentative humility as he realized the depth of his misjudgment. And in that moment, the kitchen became more than a room. It became a lesson in courage, equality, and the power of being seen for who you truly are. If you can feel the tension, admiration, and transformation in this moment, take a second to subscribe, because the final chapter will deliver a resolution so powerful it will stay with you forever. And if you have ever misjudged someone based on appearance or status, comment where you are watching from, because what happens next will change Alexander, and everyone watching, forever. Alexander Hawthorne stood silently in the kitchen, sunlight casting long shadows across the polished countertops, as the weight of recognition and humility settled in his chest, because for the first time, he truly understood the courage, intelligence, and dignity of Naomi Clark, a black woman whose calm, alert eyes and graceful movements had rewritten every assumption he had ever held. Dominic watched his father closely, pride and understanding reflected in his restless brown eyes, knowing the moment was as much a lesson for Alexander as it was a revelation about trust and equality, while Naomi continued her work, chopping vegetables with precise elegance, each movement quietly demonstrating the skill, patience, and leadership she had carried her whole life in spaces that had often dismissed her. Alexander took a slow breath, swallowing the sting of shame and surprise, then stepped forward, voice steady but filled with newfound respect, asking Naomi to share her approach to leadership, teamwork, and fairness. And she explained simply, her words carrying the calm authority of experience, that true strength lies in respect, empathy, and honesty, and that privilege should be used to lift others, not reinforce barriers. The kitchen, once a symbol of hierarchy and expectation, now felt like a classroom, every detail illuminated by sunlight and understanding. And Alexander realized that for too long he had measured worth by appearance, pedigree, or obedience, never recognizing the quiet resilience of those society underestimated. He felt a shift in his heart, a humility that made him smaller in ego but larger in insight, understanding that leadership was not control but recognition, not authority but responsibility. Dominic smiled, joining Naomi in a small task, demonstrating the equality and trust between them, and Alexander realized that wealth and power meant nothing without character, courage, and the ability to see beyond surface judgments. He finally knelt beside Naomi, placing a hand over hers, acknowledging her strength, intelligence, and the invaluable lesson she had taught him in mere hours. And in that gesture, she nodded slightly, a quiet understanding passing between them that transcended status, color, and expectation. Alexander then called his family together, sharing openly what he had learned, that assumptions rooted in race, status, or age are dangerous, that respect is earned through action, and that courage often wears no uniform but changes lives nonetheless. The sunlight bathed the room as he spoke, and for the first time, the Hawthorne household understood that the true legacy of wealth is measured not in money, but in empathy, humility, and justice. If this story resonates, take a second to subscribe, because lessons like these stay with us forever. And if you have ever been misjudged or overlooked, comment where you are watching from, because courage, dignity, and truth can rewrite any expectation. The moral was clear: never underestimate someone based on appearance. Privilege is best used to lift, not judge, and respect and recognition are the true marks of greatness.